one of the most popular chart analysts in the entire crypto space, who happens to hate XRP, is now arguing that the price of XRP is about to absolutely melt faces. Look at the headline here, veteran analyst. Call me crazy, but I think XRP sends from here. That's from the Crypto Basic. I'll also cover this story towards the end of the video. SEC docs confirm Ripple will hand over, using a round number here, 126 million XRP to be locked and traded for company shares. And so now we know the figure that Ripple is putting into the Evernorth XRP treasury, which I had been wondering. I figured it would be substantial, but that still does mean that the vast majority of what is being invested just initially right out the gate will be from other firms, which I prefer personally. I like that the heavy lifting is being done, says, call me crazy, is none other than Kaleo. And he's unquestionably one of the more popular analysts in the entire crypto space. Here you can see on X, he has 728,500 followers, and he's been here since 2017. In fact, he created this account just 2 months before I myself jumped into crypto. So he's been around for a hot minute. And I've been following him, I don't know when I initially hit follow, but probably about half a decade ago. I mean, it's been a long time. And this guy hates XRP. I don't know that I'd say he suffers from XRP derangement syndrome, at least not based on some of his more recent posts, but he still hates it. There's no question this guy hates XRP, but I will give credit where it's due. He's being intellectually honest in the way that he's charting XRP. And he has been able to sniff out the times when XRP has shown strength in the charts, even though his follower base, most of them hate that. They hate that he likes XRP, but he has been posting over the years bullish stuff about XRP at times when it makes sense to be bullish about XRP in the charts. And he'll still crap all over it and make fun of it. But I can, again, it's ridiculous. He has a terrible take on XRP, but he's entitled to his perspective here. But he's right about it. I just find it so fascinating. And it's just such a curious case, don't you think? Where somebody is able to recognize that XRP has the interest of the world. It does keep, after all this, even all the SEC attacks, it's still running. But then at no point do you look back after, now for him, close to a decade at this point, at no point does he look inward and just question himself and be like, wait a minute, this XRP thing, it's been in the top 10 coins by market cap for its entire existence. What don't I understand? What am I missing? Where's the introspection? Where's the intellectual curiosity as to how this could be the case? And because if he's right, how come the rest of the world is wrong? And how come the rest of the world can't see it? You know, and there are all sorts of coins that have fallen out of favor, never to come. I want to take a sip of water here. Sorry about that. There are all sorts of coins that have fallen out of favor, never to come back. There are a number of coins that were even briefly in the top 10, like even back in 2017, and they just never came back. So what's up with this XRP thing? But still, so it's kind of funny. So I thought I'd share this because given that he hates XRP so much, but he's bullish on it, it's just fascinating, right? Especially when it's an account this large, worth talking about. And so I want to share with you some of his older posts first. Here's one from October 30th, 2018. So we're in the heart of the bear market at that point in 2018. He said, if Ripple, the company, is ever issued a subpoena by the SEC, what happens to their centralized currency? So there you go. And he hasn't changed his perspective. He still thinks that XRP itself is centralized. Never mind the fact that there is no central point of failure. Doesn't matter if you're Kaleo. Doesn't matter. It is centralized because reasons. And then check this out. The parent company Ripple issues and has control of keys on a node until the owner of said node changes the keys, and the company has the ability to freeze and confiscate funds at their discretion, among other things. That's some of his gripes about XRP. Literally none of that is true. Also, cryptocurrencies don't have parent companies. Okay, XRP is not, it's a decentralized cryptocurrency. It's not a subsidiary of a company. That doesn't make, it's computer code. It can't be a subsidiary of a parent company. What the hell are you even talking about? It's such a stupid narrative. Like, obviously XRP cannot be frozen. But still, this is the type of stuff that was spouted by these guys that have irrationally hated XRP for years. And that was a huge narrative back then, but it was never true, of course. I'm just showing you some samplings here so that when we get to the part where he's like, yeah, this is going to pump, you can see just how fascinating it is that he's at least being honest on that part. Here's a post from November 22nd of 2020, a month before the SEC sued Ripple, attacking XRP holders the world over. Khalil wrote, honestly, XRP is a worthless piece of shit. I trade worthless pieces of shit, though. If it has volatility, and if the setup is right, forget the fundamentals. I have a bag. Okay. Well, you definitely forgot the fundamentals. In fact, you forgot them so much that apparently you never researched them. You never even knew them. Or if you did, then you're a liar. Now, if he did research it and he knows better and he's a liar, then I'm going to lose a lot of respect for this guy and I'll just stop following him. If he just has a stupid opinion, which obviously this is the most stupid opinion you can have about XRP, that it's like it's a scam or centralized or this, after all these years, then okay, that's one thing. You're allowed to be wrong. But I mean, think about this too. The SEC came after Ripple, and even the SEC thrown everything they could at Ripple. Even they didn't claim that it was a scam. Even they didn't. Even the SEC was aware that Ripple doesn't control XRP itself. They never asserted that they did. So all this is obviously nonsense. Here's a post from March 20th, 2021. So we're in the bull market here. This is about a month before XRP would ultimately go on to hit its cycle high that happened in the middle of April, roughly 2021. And so this is a few months after the SEC had sued Ripple. This is an XRP BTC chart. March 20th, 2021. Khalil says, XRP BTC. Apparently, it's scam going season. When it comes to shit coins, I'm a trader and I really like this setup. I'm long. And so there you go. It's a scam coin, even though the SEC, which was suing Ripple at the time, even they didn't assert that it was a scam. There was no assertion of fraud whatsoever, but it's a scam. This is what these people say. Maybe he does have XRP derangement syndrome. Maybe this qualifies as XRP derangement syndrome. But it's just so fascinating. If XRP is a scam, how come some of the largest banks and financial institutions the world over haven't been able to sniff that out? I mean, in my very last video, I highlighted that T. Rowe Price, which has been around since the 1930s, with close to $1.8 trillion in assets under management, they are launching a multi-coin crypto ETF, and it looks like XRP is going to be part of it. XRP was listed 36 times in an SEC filing. So like, but Khalil knows it's a scam. It's just the most sophisticated banks on the entire planet. They can't figure it out. And these investment firms, they can't figure it out. But Khalil knows. Oh, do you know that? Is it a scam coin, Khalil? Yeah, I don't think so. It's just hilarious though. But again, at least he's being intellectually honest about the charts. It's more than you can say for some of these folks like Peter Brandt. Whew, that guy. Here's another post. This is from April 6, 2021. So XRP getting a little hot. It says XRP BTC is about to break out of a 3+ year downtrend. Zero exposure here seems irresponsible. When this shitcoin starts to pump, it makes vertical moves, aka all at once for a burst. Still very early. Well, part of that's true. When XRP goes, oh, it just goes. We certainly witnessed that in November this past year, didn't we? And when it made the moves in July, that was pretty damn quick too, frankly. But we're still waiting for the final parabolic rally for XRP, which is coming, I firmly believe anyway. It's going to rocket to the upside and finally melt faces for the first time in almost a decade. That's going to be the real fun part. And he does believe that's coming. That's the interesting thing about this. So I'm going through things in particular order, but just staying with me because he does believe that XRP is absolutely going to go crazy. Then there was this post, as we're in a bear market year, March 22nd, 2022. It says, the number of people that come out of the woodworks to defend XRP when I mention it blows my mind just about as much as the fact it's still in the top 10. See, and this is why I say, at some point, given that, think about this, the worst thing that could have happened to a coin outside of like there being a hole in the code that wasn't discovered until years later, outside of that, the worst thing that could happen to a coin was the SEC going after it. And that happened with XRP, and it did not fall out of the top 10 coins by market cap. At some point, once just being aware of that, shouldn't you at some point, Khalil, look inward and just be like, well, the rest of the world is telling me I'm wrong, and that's why XRP is in the top 10 coins by market cap this whole time. What don't I understand? What am I missing? Surely I can't be the fool, right? Claiming that XRP can be frozen and that it's a scam even though the SEC didn't assert it. It doesn't have utility, all this stuff you claim. But you know best. The rest of the world doesn't know though, right? You're the right one. Oh, okay, Khalil. Okay. I don't think so, buddy. Here's another from October 9th, 2022. It's 2022 and Tron and XRP are two of the best looking charts in crypto. WTF. And this is another fucking hilarious thing here. So TRX Tron, that's the only other coin I know of off the top of my head that was in the top 10 coins by market cap in 2017, fell out, and then returned at least for a period of time. And he's saying WTF. Maybe he's really not doing his research, because I know why Tron ended up doing well. Tron, I don't know if this is still true because I don't keep up with the latest Tron news because I just don't care. But I do know that Tron, within the last couple years, became the largest stablecoin platform on the planet. That's what Tron became, the largest stablecoin platform, and the market responded. But here's Khalil, apparently not well-researched at all, saying WTF. So he doesn't understand that. And again, I don't know if Tron still is, I don't keep up with it. I do keep up with XRP though. And he doesn't understand that. At what point does he just get curious and be like, I don't get it. Why don't I understand it? Why doesn't he just type something on the internet there? You got the sum of all human knowledge just at your fingertips. Why don't you type something in there and figure it out? Never figured it out. Here's another one. This is July 30th of last year, though, and this is where I got to give him credit, though. Like, he's acknowledging this, even though he hates XRP irrationally. He says XRP BTC ratio looks primed for a squeeze. So think about that. He could see that. And I was saying the same freaking thing. And this guy hates XRP. I was saying the same thing throughout 2024. I was like, guys, look at the XRP BTC pair. It's at historic lows. Markets find bottoms. This is probably a good time if you're in the market to buy XRP. Wouldn't you know it, XRP rocketed months after that. So not that I ever knew, and I didn't know exactly when the bottom would be, but I knew that that was the setup that historically meant we were about to rocket on the XRP BTC pair. And he saw it there too. He said it looks primed for a squeeze in July of last year before it rocketed. And then there's this. This is from September 19th of this year. He says XRP is the most hated coin that somehow always finds a way to send higher every cycle. Yes, it does. So why don't you research why it is the case that so many people have such high confidence in XRP? Might it be there's actual utility? Because I'll tell you this, I've been holding XRP, never sold a single XRP in my entire life, been holding it almost 8 whole years, and I absolutely would not have done that if XRP didn't have extreme amounts of utility. If it wasn't one of the most useful cryptocurrencies on the entire planet with desirable technical attributes, no, I wouldn't have held it for almost a decade at this point. Yeah, so it finds a way because people who invest in crypto, they're putting their dollars or their whatever their fiat currency is where they think it makes sense to place those bets. And so market cap is the sum knowledge and beliefs of investors the world over. They're all telling you that XRP makes sense. Why can you not figure that out? How can you not figure? You have the internet. I can see you typing on it on X. Figure it out, man. Here's another post. It's from October 17th of this year, so we're getting up to the latest. And so this chart's going back to 2014. And he wrote, imagine how mad the timeline would be if XRP ran back the same playbook it did in December of 2017 after it was rugged/wick to practically zero on Binance immediately before ripping to new all-time highs. Now, I actually mentioned this topic the other day, and you can see what he's talking about here, specifically on Binance. And I don't want to go into the reasons why for the purposes of this video. It's too far outside the scope of this video. But for a split second on one exchange, Binance, XRP effectively fell to zero. It was almost literally at zero. And so maybe somebody fat fingered it and typed in something wrong, and then somebody bought low, and then it caused a wick down here. But it was for a split second, rocketed back up, and it was only on Binance. Well, he's just noting, hey, we just got this wick from the biggest liquidation of it in crypto history. And he's just kind of saying, would it be, I'm paraphrasing here, but basically, wouldn't it kind of be funny if history's rhyming with itself, and then right after you had that scam wick to the bottom, you just rocketed to the upside again? Because it turns out he actually does think that's going to happen, and he hates XRP, but he still believes it's about to rocket. And it's funny because he has more confident XRP is going to melt faces than some people in the XRP community who love XRP. There are some people who are petrified right now. And I don't think that's most XRP holders, but it's some of them. It's definitely some of them losing hope here, getting impatient because markets are beating them down. And so he reposted that just a couple days ago, and Khalil wrote, call me crazy, but I think XRP sends from here. He does think it's going to go. And then he wrote further this, and he shared this chart, another XRP chart here, XRP USD. He wrote, XRP, lower time frame, so meaning short term, lower time frame looks ready to rip, send it. And he's got this arrow pointing back up above $3. And he doesn't think it's going to stop there, just to be clear. He has made it very clear he thinks that XRP ultimately is going to melt and faces this market cycle. And it would be silly to believe otherwise. In fact, this is the final post from him that I'm going to share. This is an old one. This is from November 19th, 2017. And this happens to be 2 days. He posted this 2 days after I purchased XRP for the first time in my life. And this is so true. It's still true today. He said, if you don't think that all of this money that's been flowing into Bitcoin will eventually cascade into alts, you're delusional. And then he listed a bunch of coins he believes it's going to go into, including XRP. And so I just wanted to point that out because this is the same conversation we're having in 2025 right now. We have not had an alt season. And if you think that profit won't be pulled from Bitcoin and then rotate into a bunch of altcoins, you lost today in mud. And I understand it was controversial back then and it hadn't happened to that point, but then it did happen. And it happened to, what would you, maybe you could say the end of November, early part of December is when it was somewhere around there when it rocketed. When I say it rocketed, I'm talking not just XRP, I'm saying altcoins, the entire alt sector. And so if you think that's not going to happen this cycle, why? Do humans have different DNA this cycle than they did that cycle? And last cycle also, it's like different now. And as a result, humans now have different behaviors where they don't want to maximize profit. They don't want to take profit for something that they've ridden from a certain level to way, way, way higher. They don't want to take that profit and then shove it into stuff that hasn't run higher. That human behavior is gone now. Is it really? Because I don't think so. I do not believe that's remotely plausible. And here's a post, by the way, from Tropic. This account is run by the co-founders of Glassnode and Swissblock. Both of those are on-chain analytics firms which do consistently fantastic work. And so Tropic here wrote the following. Seen a lot of emotional farewells and capitulation posts on our feed. That is not how tops play out. He's talking about market top. That is not the sentiment. He's so right. He says, people are frustrated, and rightfully so. Large players are getting into position. Low volume markets are being manipulated. Same way it happened in 2020. Or same way it happened end of 2020. Don't over leverage and do long traps to capture the downside volatility. Major capital rotation is happening in traditional finance. Russell 2000 is close to all-time high. Patience is key. Yeah, so he's right there. I firmly believe that's the case too. Major capital rotation. So there will be a lot of more money flowing into risk on assets, equities, and in crypto. Russell 2000, it's hovering around all-time highs. It's hit a few all-time highs recently. We just need to see it break out with conviction. And as you see that happen, that means that there's a greater appetite for risk on assets because you're going further out the risk curve. And as that has happened every single time in history, while crypto has existed, altcoins have rocketed. So that is what makes sense here. Of course, this is what's coming, my friends. It's coming. Then there's this. SEC documents confirm Ripple will hand over, I'm using a round number here, 126 million XRP to be locked and traded for company shares. Now, this is fantastic. I'm happy to see this because that does mean that a pretty strong majority of the initial funds that are flowing into Evernorth are from other companies. So it's not like Ripple had to do the heavy lifting because there wasn't interest from other firms, other major firms. Not true. So yeah, and it's true, like Ripple's putting in a substantial amount here, but most of this, it's coming from other sources, and presumably it's going to keep growing from there. I mean, that's obviously part of the goal. So this $1 billion figure we've been talking about, that's just to start. It can go way higher than that. And you're talking about massive quantities of XRP just being locked up because this is a treasury reserve company for XRP. That's what this company does. Ripple will hand over 126 million XRP, according to details from a recent SEC filing about its role in the Evernorth Holdings deal. XRP community figure Chad Steingraber called attention to this development in a tweet on Wednesday. Per the filing, the XRP tokens, worth approximately $305 million today, will be locked in exchange for company shares as part of Ripple's investment in the Evernorth Armada Acquisition Corp 2 merger. That's a mouthful. Steingraber is speculating that XRP's publicly available supply could diminish as the trend develops, potentially creating a supply shock that impacts price over the long term. Yeah, that is obviously true. As I noted in the last video where I was talking about this, you're talking about 0.5% of all XRP just from this one move, getting sapped up. I'm using a rough number, but about 0.5% of the total supply of XRP is going to be locked up and not available for purchase as a result of this. And that's just to start. It'll grow from there. That's the goal, is to have it grow substantially from there. And again, you could say 0.5%, but there's 100% in total. That's a 0.5%, a small part of that. Yeah, shut up, because you whiny little bitch. Because that's, again, this is one thing that has happened in the XRP ecosystem, and it's 0.5%. 0.5% from just this one thing happening. That's a bigger deal than I think some people appreciate. And again, this is only going to grow. Anyway, piece continues. Meanwhile, the move suggests that Ripple is intensifying its efforts to connect with corporate and institutional partners through tokenized equity deals. Ripple strengthens relationships with key ventures like Evernorth by converting XRP into company shares. And I got to correct this next part. They write, at the same time, it is also reducing XRP's circulating supply, an effect that could influence its long-term value. Okay, that part's not true. This is not reducing XRP's circulating supply. Here, let's go to XRP. Circulating supply is just over 60 billion. That does not go down. Once a coin is considered to be issued, then it's out there in the wild. It doesn't have to be available for sale on an exchange to be considered in circulation. For instance, my XRP that I've been holding for almost 8 years, well, I bought it over a span of years, but my collection of XRP is not for sale. Is it still in circulation? Yes. That metric says yes, it is part of circulating supply. So this is not reducing circulating supply, but it is reducing the amount of XRP that would otherwise potentially be available to market participants. It's going to be locked up specifically for Treasury reserve purposes. So it has the effect of reducing, available supply, of course, but that doesn't mean the circulating supply itself is down. That is different. And so I did want to point out that. Now, truth be told, and this is just a pet peeve of mine, but the truth is that all of the XRP that exists is in circulation because the people that created it, David Schwartz, Jed McCaleb, and Arthur Brito, they doled it out. In fact, a huge chunk of it went to Ripple, the company, obviously, and then to Chris Larsen, who did not create it. And so that once it goes from the people that created it to somebody else, it's considered out into the wild. But for some reason, the creators of Live Coin Watch and CoinMarketCap and every other index, they decide to treat this different. They're treating it as though XRP was created by Ripple, even though XRP was created before Ripple, the company, was created. They're doing it bass-ackwards. And it's always been a pet peeve of mine, and so I'm just pointing it out. All XRP is actually in circulation, but in order to have intelligent conversation with my fellow humans out there, I'll articulate it the way that it's accepted, even though I dispute this. So I'll word it as though there's 60 billion circulating supply, because otherwise I can't have an intelligent conversation with humans. And I'd have to go into all this nuance about why I firmly believe that actually it's all been issued, and as a result, it's all circulating supply. I don't want to have that conversation every time circulating supply comes up, so I don't normally note that. But here I am. I'm just noting this is a pet peeve of mine. I don't like it, and damn it, I wish that weren't the case. But yeah, so as a result, Live Coin Watch, CoinMarketCap, they decided that effectively Ripple's the issuer. That's the way they're treating it. That is the way they're treating it. And Ripple's not the issuer, but they're treating it that way. And as a result, the circulating supply is only 60 billion. But anyway, so, either way, the part that matters to us as XRP holders is that there are more market participants that want to hold XRP and are holding XRP for the long haul. And that's increased demand. That absolutely matters. Can you imagine another 5-10 years of this? Another 15-20 years of this? Because XRP is clearly here to stay. It's an early winner of the crypto space. So imagine more and more market participants coming in and doing stuff like this, and then more retail interest, more institutional interest. There's not going to be that much XRP available for purchase, not at these prices anyway. There's going to be far too much demand for XRP to be hanging out at $2.43, which is where it is as I'm recording this video. Price is going to go way higher. So anyway, this is all good news. Very happy to see this. Glad that Ripple is doing what they're doing here, and even happier that there are a bunch of other major firms that are throwing down some serious buck to have a bunch of XRP held in this new treasury reserve. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea.